had?
No, not even close.
Oh man.
No, we didn't make too much of a dent. We got through maybe like a $1,500, $2,000 in credits, but we didn't burn through all of it.
Mm.
Um, anyways, we still have like bunch of credits on Gemini. Uh, so we're switching over to that. We're also testing like Quen from Alibaba because that's supposedly is just as not as good as Claude, but it's kind of the one of the closer ones. But I'll run through all that. I know you've been playing around with it. So
Hmm.
just 1 second. And just like I guess real quick, like how many of you guys are playing with like OpenClaw or Claude agents?
Yeah, definitely.
Yep, for
Okay.
sure. Not, I could do more, but a little.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So some of this might be repetitive for you guys, but I kind of put this together mostly for somebody like me when it was like just messing around with it and just like the basic things that as I was kind of going through the setup process, I was like, oh, this is like a nuanced thing that I didn't even think about. So before I get into like all the practicality and fun functionality that you can potentially use it for, I'm just going to go through some of the basic tediousness of setting it up. Because I think majority of you guys haven't done anything, so I'll go from there. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right. The first thing is, you know, if you're gonna set this up, and I don't know if you guys are setting again, like maybe I think just kind of from a best practice standpoint, it's good to set it up on its own independent CPU, right? So I bought some Mac Mini, like used Mac Minis that were wiped and then just started from there. I can understand why that's beneficial of having like messed around with it long enough for the past like 3, 4 weeks. Um, But obviously, that being said, just know if you're going to run it on your laptop or anything that has any other data that's on there, it's like it's a security risk, right? I think that's pretty much a no-brainer. Everybody's kind of aware of that. That being said, if you're going to like register at least on a Mac Mini, like you're going to have an Apple ID, and this is just some basic thing that was like, oh, you need a fresh email address and you need a phone number that's not actually tied to yours that you're already using for another Mac product. And so, because I wanted to keep it completely separate. So I just created a fresh email account on Gmail and I used Burner to get a verified number so I can set up a two-factor, authorization. But just again, something to think about so that you can have a dedicated Apple ID and I made a brand new Apple ID. So again, just something that's like an immediate roadblock that I realized when I was like trying to set it up. Um, the next thing is like, picking your hardware. You don't need a Mac Mini, right? It's like I know that it's also gotten more. I think it went from like 500, $600 to like 800, $900 now for a Mac Mini if you're buying a brand new one. Um, I don't know what the Facebook Marketplace like cost is for getting them, or if they're still difficult to get right now. But I got mine pretty quickly, pretty easily. If you don't want to get a Mac Mini, there's a bunch of other ways to set it up. You don't need a Mac Mini to do it. But the idea is just pick a hardware, right? I have my CTO that's just running the primary agent off of Linux on a Raspberry Pi. And then, rest of the agents that he's using is set up on their own virtual machines or VPS. And I'll run into what that means later, but it's just basically means it's an agent that's hosted on the cloud and doesn't have to be running on a physical hardware device. Um, the next is like picking a framework, right? So it's like you can choose OpenClaw, you can choose Claude Agent, there's Perplexity Computer, there's uh, a few other options. There's also a new one called Hermes that I haven't spent a lot of time with, but I think from a beginner's perspective, OpenClaw or Claude is probably a good way to go. The benefit that I've seen just with OpenClaw is the fact that it's model agnostic. Although when we switched from OpenAI to Gemini, I will say that there were some issues that I ran into, and I don't know if that's because like OpenClaw is now owned by OpenAI and it's creating some friction. I also know when I was trying to troubleshoot it using Claude, that Claude was then trying to sell me on Claude, which is basically like change the API to using Claude instead of Gemini, and it'll solve all your problems. So again, this is probably something we're gonna see leaning more towards the future, where it's like as they become as these frameworks start, becoming owned by one of the larger AI companies, they may be singular in nature in terms of like what LLMs they give you access to. Um, at least for like a beginner user friendly version, right? Like out of box kind of version. Something like Hermes, like I tried to mess around with and it just was not as intuitive for me as a non-technical person to like get it up and running. I just ran into like the moment I ran the install code, it just created issues for me. So yeah, that's why I didn't use it. But keep that in mind again for all you guys that are trying to set this stuff up. Uh, The next step is like giving it a brain, right? So creating an Obsidian vault is something like, again, it's not instructing you to do it in the OpenClaw setup, but it's something that you start learning as you start going down the YouTube rabbit hole of like, how do you make this thing start being functional? And Obsidian is kind of like, it's almost like notes, but specific to your AI agent. And it's like its brain, right? It's kind of like functioning. Um, and then it's also using MD files, right? So like this is part of the OpenClaw setup. So we'll ask you, what is the soul of this of your agent, right? And like, what is the intent of this agent? What do you want it to do? Um, and I think like instead of like being, at least for me, because my CTO was also trying to set up, but it's interesting how I approached it versus how he was approaching it, because as a more technical mindset versus me who is not technical. So I was literally like treating this like I'm a toddler, whereas like I don't know how to do any of this stuff. So I kept on poking and prodding at it. And my version ended up being more of a useful functional agent for what we were doing within the Leader Pro tech stack versus what he was able to accomplish with his. I don't know necessarily why that is versus like I kept on telling my agent to like upgrade yourself or like ask me questions that's going to help you better fit me and be better functional. And I was very clear of like what I wanted it to do. And I wasn't using any like I wasn't overthinking it or using technical jargon. I was just like telling it what I wanted to do. And if it couldn't set it up itself, whether from a credentials perspective or from some like in the initial stages, like I wanted to set up, for example, a Telegram group chat with my CTO. Like that became an issue. That was something that was a roadblock, but then I kept on working with it. My CTO was on the call when I was trying to set that up. And it's not as straightforward as it thinks, but like I just went back and forth in 30 minutes. Like it helped me troubleshoot it for it, right? And so that's what it ended up doing. And I will just say like that's probably the biggest friction or biggest frustration right now is like you're gonna have to spend like 30 to 45 minutes to troubleshoot something with it, but it will get you through it. And the thing that I found most useful is like doing screen grabs and sending it as to like every little baby step along the way. The agent will, and at least initially for me, it was like trying to give me like 5 steps ahead of like I needed to do. And my brain doesn't function that way. So I was just like, give me one step at a time. And every time it gave me a step. And if I ran into a blocker again, I would just screenshot it and send it back. And that ended up working pretty well for me to kind of like move things along progressively, to kind of get it to ultimately do what I wanted it to do. The other part of it that I would just say, like step 4, and this is something where I met another guy that's here locally, but he's using a pod of AI agents. He's much further along. He's been using OpenAI since OpenAI came out. He's been using OpenClaw since it came out 2 to 3 months ago. And literally he's doing this in a way where I want to get to, which is like he's talking to it through Discord every single morning, and it's just has an orchestrator that's then dispersing to the agents like the different daily tasks, and he's getting a report coming into him every single day, and he's now like trying to figure out how to build these pods across different departments. And I'll get into what that means, but like a pod, for example, is like he might have an HR orchestrator, and then within there, there's going to be maybe 5 to 10 sub agents that are going to be handling all the minutia of tasks that the overall HR department is. It's imagine like employees within HR. So as you scale up, you're going to have those that are the cogs in the wheels, like these agents, that are going to specialize in certain parts of that cog in the wheel, right? So it's like they're going to specialize in certain tasks. And as you scale it, as you become more dependent upon the agent to do something consistently, that's kind of the way that, at least what I've been learning from him, is like the way that you can scale it up is like the more you can give an agent a specialized task, the more optimal they're going to be at performing that on a, especially if it's like something you want them to do on a regular basis, right? Like on a day-to-day basis. And I'll get into some of the frameworks of like different tasks and different things that you can assign to them to do. That's on a day-to-day basis, right? So like, don't think of this in a way where it's like, I don't have a process. I'm just going to give it something. I'm going to tell it what to do and then expect it to like work miracles for you, right? That's going to be like, for me, I learned very quickly, like that's just like not how it works. And it's going to create more problems, or like create more, not problems, but like a steeper learning curve in the very beginning for yourself and for the agent to make it work in a way that you want it to work. And an example of that was like, I also asked the agent to create a arbitrage agent, like on Kalshi and like on Polymarket, right? And like have it start trading for me as an arbitrage agent. And that was a failed experiment because you need to go deep down into this rabbit hole of understanding like the algorithms that goes along with it. And then there's a whole timing sensitivity that goes along with it. And you need to basically dedicate that to be like a full-time project than it is like install a skill and do all this stuff. Like I was able to get it to do the task of trading, but it was like, I mean, it's lost like a few $100. I mean, it's not like I didn't give it like a bunch of shit, but like it's, making $2 to $3 bets, and it's not working in the way that it's like. That's what I'm trying to use as an example, is like you can't just tell it to do something and expect it to work miracles. So that's the other part. The last part I'll just say on the talking to it is like, and what this guy suggested to me is like, the best way to learn is just to literally interact with your agent every single day, right? It's like you want it to have an understanding of the way that you actually think and the way that you process information. Um, and to me, that's like why this is such a critical technology to start figuring out now, because I don't think that there's a shortcut to that. And I don't know what that shortcut will look like. I know that there's out of box agents now, like Meet Victor, that they're trying to solve for this, but I think it's going to be such a nuanced workflow. It's only going to work for certain things, and then at the end of the day, it's only going to work until it stops working. Versus curating an agent to work the way that you like to work, and it's almost like the way that we individually learn, right? It's so unique to us, and the way that I do things is like going to be very different from how Kathleen does things or how Jason processes things, right? So it's like, and that's where I think like the way that you communicate with your agent, it starts figuring out what you actually want, how you think, and then it can start doing the things in a way of getting the information that it needs from you to actually be functional. Um, and yeah, I think that's I don't know how to. I don't think there's a way to shortcut. I think that this is something that you just have to do from day one, and that's like um there's no like playbook or like fast way to do it other than just doing it. But it's a cool experience. And I think there's a way also to set it up where it starts taking voice notes and can transcribe your voice notes. So you don't have to type in everything. That's like one of the first things I asked it to do is when I set up on Telegram is like, help me so that you can take voice notes and transcribe it so I don't have to type everything, right? And so that was something that was very useful for me in order for me to interact with it on a day-to-day basis. Um, I talked about this, but kind of like, giving it its own clean machine, setting up on a Mac Mini, VPS or cloud, Raspberry Pi, or dedicated VM. We have a ton of like Amazon, like credits, AWS credits. So creating a dedicated, virtual machine is something that we've been using those credits for too. Um, this is something for you guys too, like credits. Like there's a lot of credits for a lot of startups. even if you think you're not gonna get it, like you'll be surprised. I think just trying to apply for like credits across, like Microsoft offers them, Amazon, you know, you may not get like a ton, like you may not get 10,000, dollars or $25,000 in credits, like some of the cases we have because we've been funded, but like I've also been able to get like 2,500 in credits from Claude or 2,500 from OpenAI, and that had nothing to do with any of the programs that we're in. We just kind of applied and tangentially to those. I'll try to see if I can find those, but like they might be becoming a little bit just like more scarce. But keep trying to scour and keep applying for those things. You just never know, and it'll give you, at least for us, I think it's like a good way to um, experiment on the onboarding and learning process, where it's not like coming directly out of your own pocket. And again, if you need something that is more cost effective, there are, free LLMs out there, and there's also like Gwen from Alibaba that's like a tenth of the cost of like Claude. And so there are ways to do it still cheaply of like running through the experiment. And again, like you're not, a few $100s can go a long, long way. Um, as long as you're not like giving it like coding projects and like creating, having it do a bunch of like creating its own apps on its own, like where it's gonna run infinitesimally. Like, so be conscientious of that. Like you're just not, I think like if you wanted to code, if you want to build projects, like that's or develop apps and stuff, there's better tools to do where there are better guardrails than just like having your agent do that, right? So I wouldn't recommend doing those things. But in terms of like business operations and like running different aspects of your business, this is for me like for sure a game changer. So here's some of like the pros and cons of like, there's also beyond these four, there's also a bunch of other ways to do it. Like you could have a machine, you could also use Docker. There's different ways to kind of do this. But just keep in mind, it's like the biggest thing of like giving it a machine versus like doing it on cloud or virtual machine is that you need, if you give it its own clean machine, like or if it's on a Mac Mini, is that it's going to need to be powered on, right? 24/7 if you're going to use it, right? And that's the only key difference. So when I was in Egypt last week, I brought my Mac Mini with me and had to power it up there. It worked, it was fine, but like, that's something to think of. And then I realized, yeah, you can set it up on a VPS. For me, it was just like I didn't know how to do that in the very beginning, and so I didn't do it that way. I might do that for future agents, but I think like you're gonna have to figure out like the pros and cons of doing that for yourself individually. Um, all right. OpenClaw versus Claude. Uh, this is kind of how I just think about it. But again, like as you start, as these tools start becoming under the ownership of these larger LLMs, like I just don't know how easy it will be to switch from one to the other. OpenClaw, at least in theory, I look at it as like more of like a car, and you can swap out the engine at a given time, which is like basically switching to a different LLM model. And you can. We didn't have to do this, but like this is definitely something that you will have to do, which is like creating, and you'll see this like if you go down the YouTube rabbit hole, but like people creating dashboards for like, how many credits or tokens it's using, right? And like there's a bunch of Silicon Valley VC funds are saying, like the future of currency is going to be tokens, right? And I can see kind of like how that happens because like every time you create any kind of processing, it's using up tokens for that purpose, right? So uh, keep that in mind, like, there's a varying range of like cost as it relates to processing across these different LLMs. And so depending upon, and there's people that will like assign a specific LLM for specific tasks in order for them to optimize. And there's this whole other thing of like optimizing your LLMs for cost. So as you scale or as you continue to use this for more tasks, more projects, that's something that will probably also become something that you'll have to think about. But that would probably be in its own dedicated like uh workshop session in terms of just how like optimize for that. But yeah, you can also create dashboards. You can see like what the credits and usage are on your tokens. Uh, what I think is actually useful, um, agent for inbounds. Okay. We'll get to that, Thomas, and we'll take some of those some of the your guys' use cases, and I'm happy to learn too because this is also just brand new to me. But um, I think what was useful from different learnings that I've taken is like uh, dedicating an API key for a specific agent as it relates to a specific task, right? So it's like if you have an HR agent, give it its own like API key versus like somebody, an agent in sales versus an agent in customer success, just because that way you can turn it on and off or throttle it or swap it out as needed. And it's not because different LLMs are actually better for different things too. And that can also be its own workshop. But like, so customer success versus like CFO versus like orchestrator versus research and enrichment is going to be all to me. It would be like there are different LLMs that are better for those different things. So setting up just infrastructure in the very beginning, like different API keys for different agents, I think that's a useful tip because that way you can swap it out, and also you can also monitor usage based on almost like different departments, right? If you're thinking about it from that kind of traditional context. Um, Claude agent is you're just kind of locked into the Anthropic model, and that's kind of the one thing that I just think is a little scary. And I've seen some LinkedIn stories around, and I think the one that I'm thinking of right now, like they did get their project back, but they were like offline on their project for like 48 hours because Claude sent them something, Anthropic sent them like an email saying that they broke some kind of policy, and so they no longer had access to their project. And you can imagine like the the urgency that it can kind of create, right? So just I think be conscious of that as like one of the trade-offs potentially. Again, I don't know if that's going to be something that'll um, happen as frequently going forward, but just something that I've noticed. Uh, Soul, so MD files, right? So like soul, heartbeat, memory, tools, um, skills, all these things are going to be ways for you to essentially like customize and curate your agent, right? For again, whatever specific task that you want it to do. And just think of it like I mean, it's like think of it as like yeah, departments, right? Like the way that's the just imagine the personality of somebody in HR versus the personality of like a CTO, right? It's like a VP of HR or like chief people officer, personality wise, if you just bucket them as a group, is such a different individual than it is from CTOs versus CFOs, right? Like if we were to look at, those personality tests or personality traits, like there is a reason why people go and specialize in certain fields, right? It just relates better to their personality types. And I think from a high level, maybe, you need to start thinking about similarly, however you want your agent to be effective is to start thinking in that kind of like framework. Um, and you can also like interact with Claude or like another. I think Claude is really good at kind of like understanding a lot of this stuff and in terms of like breaking it down where it's not going to give you like a technical answer, but it's a little bit more cognitive, a little bit more I think the way that at least for me, like how I've been able to kind of get our agents to um be a little bit better on the cognitive thinking front, like that's where I kind of rely on Claude to kind of help me generate the prompts or help me generate uh the context for me to plug into some of these things, right? And I can speak into Claude like very freely, like through free form conversation what I want it to do, and it can structure it in a way that I ask it to structure in a way for this specific purpose, and it does a pretty damn good job for it. So I think that's something to think about. It's like instead of you sitting there trying to type everything out and the way that you think it should be done, like I think breaking it up into those two steps of like just freely speaking into an AI tool and then saying, I want to then structure it for this purpose can be a good way to get, at least for me, it's been a great way to get the output that I need. Um, I kind of already touched upon this, but Obsidian, thinking about this as like the agent's brain, this is also a good thing to kind of like just add into from your phone, right? So it's like, so you don't have to sit in front of a laptop, but you can download the Obsidian app and you can like just add things into basically like your agent's brain and uh or you can even or like at least now like I just Telegram voice note something and be like add this to our Obsidian file, right? And like and it'll do it for me. But just keep in mind that this is what this is for, and how to think about it. Orchestrator, local workers in the cloud. This is how I have it structured. There's different forum, and this is something else you should do, but like go into forums, Facebook groups, right? Reddit forums, all this stuff. Um, there's going to be people telling you all kinds of perspectives and all kinds of opinions, right? Because everybody's getting it to work in their own way. The funny thing is though, like when I asked in a lot of these forums and groups, like, what are some practical use cases that you've seen a tangible ROI on from a B2B perspective, as a business owner that's owned a business for over 3 years, right? It's like less than 10% of the people in these groups or forums like are actually using it for an existing business, right? They're using it as like a novelty or like they're learning about it and then they're selling the fact that they've learned this, but they are not necessarily always using it in a real life use case. So I think whatever rabbit hole you go down, that's kind of like my litmus test is like if somebody's making a suggestion, like, or if I'm asking for advice, I'm always asking what's the context of the advice being given to me, right? Like, and if it's like just if it's a hobbyist that's like doing it for whatever, like I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. Like it might still solve a certain problem, but like I won't spend a shit ton of time like diving down that rabbit hole versus somebody's like, well, you maybe think of it for this. I've done it for managing meta ads, for example, which we've now set it up to do. And HeyGen just came out with a CLI, so now we can actually have our agent like prompt itself to generate videos that like it can then upload to Meta without like any front end UI UX, which is crazy, right? So there's some stuff that's really cool that you can do. But I think just kind of like again, keep in mind where you're getting the advice. But I do think it's very important to spend time in these forums and these groups to know what people are doing and what's possible. Doesn't mean that you should do it all, but I think it's important to know. Um, and so then this is the way that I have my framework set up. Again, there's people who have their orchestrator or their primary like agent in the cloud or like on a virtual machine. For me, I just feel more comfortable of it being on a physical device, and that might change later. But how I do it is like I have my primary agent on my Mac Mini, and then I communicate with my primary agent through Telegram. And literally, this agent has set up and is managing all of our other sub agents on virtual machines. And I just had to do some credentials and API, share some APIs with AWS, and then uh, oh, and on Microsoft Edge where the VMs are on, and then it was able to kind of like set everything else up on its own, but it will tell you what it needs in order for it to function. And you can even ask like, what's best practice for this? And again, like I think like I can't get past this enough, but like get outside of your own ego and just like, treat it like treating it like a toddler. Like I want this and then ask it like, can you do it for me? And if it can't do it for you, then it'll say I can't do it, and then be like, okay, then tell me how. And then literally like sending it screen grabs after each step until you get it done. That's to me worked wonders. All right. Docker, again, this is I think when you're starting to develop pods where it's like truly like you are now going to have like an HR agent, you're going to have a CFO agent, you're going to have uh um a sales agent, you're going to have a like, and then each within each of those pods, you're going to have their own sub agents. This is where I feel like something like a Docker setup is going to be super useful. But yeah, again, it's just basically creating a container for each of your agents, right? Um, so it doesn't necessarily cross paths to uh, dilute the information or like yeah, just yeah, certain things you maybe want the CFO to know, but you don't want the salesperson to know, right? If you think about it just from a company a company hierarchy perspective, right? You don't want the sales agent to divulge something from internal financial documents accidentally as part of like a sales pitch, right? So just something to think about. That's kind of like how this can help as containering that information. Something to think about. I think again, this is something I took a little bit while for me to do, but like or to figure out, and maybe like I'm gonna do a brand new setup. The idea is like to do different agents using different like using OpenClaude. I'm going to set up Claude also on a different hardware device, and then I'm going to set up computer also on a different device. I'm just going to experiment with all of them at some point in time for different kind of use cases, both for our company but also for personal, to kind of see what the pros and cons are of each. But I do think like before you start the install process and like trying to set everything up, I think you really need to know like what do you want, like have a list of things you want it to do, right? Like what is the I what are some shit that's like that you is like super manual and repetitive that you can give it to do that you want an agent to do today, right? And I think just start there, and then and it's one like something that like won't burn you if it doesn't work, right? But two, it's also like you kind of know the ins and outs of what that process workflow is already, and so you can train it properly, right? And that's why I think it's good to know, at least from a high level, like what you actually want an agent to do, and then you can start learning about. It's a good like foot in the door before you kind of like think of then letting your brain wander on all the other possibilities. But I think like being at least in the very beginning, being very narrow focused around like you just want to do one thing really well. For us, what that was like handling support tickets. Like in real time. Like when somebody comes in with a support ticket, it's not on a cron job, it's doing it like once a day. It's like in real time and it's one-on-one personalized messaging. And at the same time, it's funneling up the tickets that it doesn't have answers for. And then when we provide the answers, because it messages us on Telegram, like I don't know how to answer this, I give it its answer and then it replies back. And then it's also adding it to our FAQ wiki page. Um, so that's what I wanted. That's the first thing we wanted to do. And literally it's doing that now, where it's just literally going through and combing through all of our support tickets. We gave it API access to our admin, read only, and then it's able to see what populates into our database in real time. And then it can generate the personalized email because it has the user data to then understand the context and then respond appropriately. So it's kind of crazy that that it's able to do shit like that, but something to think about. So just a quick summary of like what you need before you actually install the first line. Decide how you want to run it, right, on a hardware or in the cloud, but clean environment. You're gonna need API keys. So if you're using Clawbot, the two main ones you're going to need to set up is like an LLM API, right? So you need to have like an OpenAI account, setting up the API there, or getting it from Claude, or getting it from Gemini, or Gwen, or you can choose from one of the free models, right? Like, but you're still going to need to create an account, get the API key. The other thing too is like depending on how you want to communicate with it. You're going to need to get the API key from Telegram or Discord. You're going to need to create like a Discord project in order for you to get the API key. Similarly with Telegram, you're going to need to send a message to the bot father, and the bot father will give you API key for you to add into the Claude prompt, and then at that point, it'll also ask you for the pairing code, and so you're gonna have to set that up too. This is some. I will just say this too, like, and then setting up Obsidian Vault and like um so like and then doing a lot of this through your terminal in the very beginning. This was different for me as again like a non-technical person that's never interacted on a CPU's terminal, right? So it's like it's its own world, and I have to a lot of times just like ask Claude for like give me the terminal command for what I want it to do because I don't know how I'm not still familiar enough with it to do it. In that way. But for you guys that are non-technical, it is you can learn it, but just know that there is like a learning curve to the language that you use and the functionality that you use within the terminal. But it is the thing that you will use, it is the interface that you will use most of the times to get things done in the fastest way possible. Like I found like trying to get OpenClaw like interface on the browser is just super slow and it's like kind of clunky and doesn't get things done as fast as I want it to. And so I just I just for speed purposes had to figure out how to do these things in terminal. Um, yeah, things like, you know, OpenClaw Gateway Restart is some shit that you're gonna learn to love, or OpenClaw Doctor Fix, right? Like these are just little phrases that you're gonna use in terminal all the time if you're using OpenClaw. Especially when OpenClaw loves to do their updates, it can also create some issues. Um, so know that it's not bug perfect, and know that there will be very, very frustrating times in all this. Um, but I still think it's something that's worthwhile to start getting familiar with now versus 6 months from now, when maybe there's less bugs, but like there's gonna be still that learning curve or training curve that exists. And you'll just be 6 months behind is my thought process. So um, how to actually talk to it. So for me, Telegram one-on-one with an agent is good. Test Discord is again, if you're managing multiple agents. Discord to me is probably like the more advanced version, or if you're more technical, you're probably going to be somebody that's more used to Discord. For me, Telegram is good. Um, oh, again for Clawbot, some stuff that you'll need to know before you actually set up the Clawbot and using they say it's just like copy and paste this one line into your terminal and it's good to go. But you're going to need to install Homebrew. Once you install Homebrew, that's fine. But then because it can install Node, Tailscale, and Obsidian then all on its own. But Homebrew is the thing that's like you need to install if you've never set up OpenClaw before. Uh, yeah, this is all Mac, correct. Sorry. Yeah. Good to note. Uh,
Yeah, you use Windows, you're gonna have a bad time with setting the stuff up. That's just how it is.
if you use Windows.
Trying to do this type of configuration with local
Yeah.
environment variables, a different, it just you kind of have to use a Mac, which has a Linux base, which is why these commands run the
Yeah,
way they do.
fair enough. Um, again, helpful information because I'm not fully aware of all of that, but that's good to know. And that's probably why a lot of people are using the Macs as part of this process. But yeah, so again, nuanced things for you guys that, again, this is catered to the people that have never set this up before, but you'll need to install Homebrew, and this is uh, the command line that you'll need to set up in the terminal to get it to then be able to install the rest of the stuff that you can then actually install Claw, right? Clawbot. So, or OpenClaw. Um, Stuff to think about. I've already talked about this enough, but just reminders of like talking to it like a toddler, using screenshots. Again, these are the things that's been super useful for me. Um, Now the possibilities once your agent is actually alive is actually kind of crazy, and you can push on the possibilities once you get it to do one task really, really well, right? And so after I was able to and these are like, you think about it from like the same way we look at everything else that we've been doing, right? It's like you wanted to do this grand thing, and for us, like we wanted to manage support tickets. It still took us like a week and a half to get it to a place where it could manage the support tickets because we would run into 20 different roadblocks in that process, right? First is like connecting it to a Gmail account, right? And then like giving it Gmail access and being able to then um and then let's just like how and then getting it to create personalized email messages where it was actually formatted in the right way versus then like giving it API credentials to our backend database in a read-only format, right? Like and then yeah, and then a bunch of different things. And then outside of support tickets, we've also connected to our meta ads. So that was a full day of like figuring out how to configure it to our Facebook API. Part of it is because when we set up uh, our Facebook ads manager, you might have a Facebook page and a Facebook ad. All these things have to kind of be Facebook. Meta is also just kind of like notoriously clunky because it's been layers and layers and years of trying to piece a lot of things together. But you need a lot of different components to be synchronized in order for that API to actually work. But then once it is connected, and it took me maybe like 3 hours to troubleshoot all the little steps of like connecting the page to the right ads account, to getting it the right access to our Instagram, to all these other little things, and then it was able to actually connect to it. And then it's like troubleshooting it to create campaigns. Like once you then realize it has the ability to autonomously create campaigns, create custom audiences, then it's like, okay, well, now it can do that. How can it actually create content that's like usable? And then it's like, okay, well, here's we gave it a repository of like all past performing ads, and then it was able to start working with that. But then it's like creating the visual component. Originally, we gave access to Nano Banana, didn't do a great job of doing that. And so we stopped with the visual ad component. We focused on, and this is something that like just came out fortuitously, but we focused on the stuff that was actually working for us, which is like the video testimonial ads. And then HeyGen actually around the same time came out with the CLI. So we connected the CLI for HeyGen, and now it's been able to create HeyGen videos and then just upload. Not, I don't even think it's uploading it to the meta campaigns, but it's just all doing it out without a front end interface. And so yeah, you can do it for that purpose. We haven't yet set it up for outbound sales, but that's something that we've been using a tool called GetSwan, which is basically I've been learning what GetSwan is doing, and it's basic. We can mirror that functionality, which is like generating all the stuff we talked about, right? Like ICP, creating an ICP matrix, generating a list of ICP targets, enriching it with like buyer intent data, right? And then like creating a contact list from that. And then sending out outreach via different channels, whether it's email or now in conjunction with our meta ads against targeted like ICP custom audiences to doing a LinkedIn outreach. All of that is possible. You can do that through we can do the email and the LinkedIn through GetSwan, but we can mirror that functionality now with these agents. We just haven't spent the time to do that. My CTO just started to use our AI agent for the SEO AEO content. So it's optimized. It's also plugged into Google Search Console. So it's looking at that data and then it's optimizing content based on Google Search Console's analytics. And then it's generating based off of that. So it's doing all these things. Yeah. So far, that's probably the key things in the about 3 to 4 weeks time is support tickets, which took us about 2 weeks to stand up. giving it access to our backend to then, there's a ton of shit it can do for our backend, but like, we're trying to train it now to actually handle all transactional messaging in real time, right? So I think that we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but like all these things of um, traditionally when somebody creates an account on your platform or enters into your pipeline, you have email templates that goes out on day one when they do this or day three when it does that. And you used to have like an email manager that is setting up all these templates for all these trigger use cases or instances, right? And now you can literally have an agent, if it's connected and can identify the triggers in your database in real time, it can personalize a message to that individual with the specific CTA, right? So for us, we have a ton of triggers. Like we know like there's on a hierarchy of like wins for our users that we know we can ask. There's higher friction asks that we can request from them in these highly personalized messages. Like when they just get a payout, we can then ask them to refer somebody and then like get into higher payout, right? Like, or they just completed something and then it just have been completed a demo and just been that those credits have been added into their payout balance. Like that's like a medium win. So we'll ask them to be like, oh, do another demo application with this one that we've already curated for you, right? And so we can continue to optimize revenue generation by using AI transactional messaging in real time. So that's something we're doing now, but it's like, again, it's trying to inform it of all these different triggers and instances, and then and what it should be doing. But a lot of that is like, it's not technical. It's just like informing it of what you want it to do and talking to your orchestrator, and then like having it then uh, generate the instructions in a way to the sub agent that it can then do it on whatever kind of schedule you want it to do. This is just kind of like, again, stuff where I got stuck, and I think like some of you guys might get stuck too as a first timer. I'm not going to run through it since some of you guys already have gone through this, and I've talked to a lot of it. And why, again, I think this is important. I think that the future is just like, this is not going to probably happen in the next like 2 to 3 years, but in 5 years, I can just see us talking to like iMessage or like whatever our chat functional, like whatever we interact with personally and professionally as a chat functionality, we're just gonna be able to ask shit and then we're gonna get it. And there's not gonna be like, we're not gonna see we don't need to see a dashboard. We're not gonna need to see some kind of UI or UX experience. We're just gonna be able to ask for it and get it, whether it's something to get done or we want to see what the results are. And that, yes, will take some time for a user behavior standpoint to like adjust to, because we're so used to that UI component of like seeing a physical dashboard and like being able to see charts and graphs like whenever we want to, and we click onto here. But now if you can see those charts and graphs in real time every single day, but it's the exact same thing as if you were to log in to go see it, but you can just ask for it or set it on a schedule to send it to you every single morning, where it's just going to be that adjustment period from a user perspective, I think. But ultimately, everything is going to be API, CLI, and that's, I mean, Salesforce just came out with their own CLI now too. And I think that's where the future of this is. So anyways, I'll stop there. I was hoping to run through like a brand new setup. I had a brand new machine that I was going to set up OpenClaude on, but I think we're running out of time. So I'll just pause and then take any questions and or just notes, feedback, stuff that you guys maybe have already done. And I'll go to see what you guys have shared already. Yeah, Jason, go for it.
Anyone confused what a CLI is and why that's so critical here?
You can, if you want to tell us the difference between API and CLI, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's a like coming from very technical background. Yeah, there's all great, all wonderful, hard lessons learned. But a CLI is a command line interface. So back to what Chris is talking about, going through the terminal. API allows you to connect through a command line interface directly into whatever workflow structure you've set up. So if you've heard like model context protocol, that's like a sort of like a CLI. that will API you into whatever company or what you're trying to do. There's more complication of plugins, skills, those things. That's where OpenClaw ties it together, which makes this pretty foundational. But otherwise, you would just be using API calls. It's what OpenClaw or others can do to wrap these together with the skills and the plugins that make them quite a bit more useful.
I do have a question on that. Maybe you can answer, but like if the tool has an API and a CLI, is there a difference in token usage based on what you choose for it to interact with?
Absolutely. I mean, API, it's like authenticate. I forgot exactly what it means, but it's more about authentication, connecting directly.
Yeah,
Think of like, all right, I have a database of information. I want to access it. That's generally through an API. The MCP plugins there, they include rules for how to engage or how to interact. So if they wrote those non-performant, saying do multiple checks and rounds, that's going to eat through your
yeah,
usage.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
And yeah, I have not found something that tells you clearly how to
got it.
find more efficiencies in your usage yet. It just sucks. That's just how it is today. So it's a little
Fair
bit of a
enough.
black box in how they get used.
Specific with
Yeah.
Anthropic, what they've changed now is that because a lot of people have been hammering their APIs with OpenClaw, if you're on the Pro Max tier, you now get charged separately for
Yeah.
API usage in the agents, separate from your Pro Max tier or whatever. So
Yeah.
API
Mhm.
means application program interface. So
That's it.
I
Yeah,
thought
and the
I thought this presentation was really good. I've seen another one here in LA. I think they're definitely getting a lot of traction. People are really interested in OpenClaw. People want to like really learn it. I think this is a really good deep dive. I think this would actually be a great YouTube video actually. And I think this is a really good job, Chris. I really like it. And then another thing too is that there's an OpenClaw community in LA that's like pretty active. I know like you're all over the world, so I don't know if you're able to go, but they actually invite people to do demos. So
Okay.
so you should do a
I
demo of
like
your
that.
setup and then like you
I honestly am like I feel like a baby. Like
no, you should do it.
I
You
don't
should
I don't yeah, I honestly am like I don't know. I'm like I feel like there's so much for me to learn. And I know like I mean look, I mean yeah, I think there's just so much for me to learn. And the good thing is like though I will say is that I mean
but no one's done a demo yet on what you talked about. Like you gave a couple examples, like one of them was like campaigns, right? Is that active? Are you actually doing it?
yeah, we're running meta ads
Demo that. Like,
using
why are you so worried? Like, it doesn't like people just want to see uses of it. Like, you don't have
yeah,
to be an expert. I mean, you're really obviously you've done a deep dive, you're very experienced, but like you should definitely do a demo. I'll post information in the group chat, but I thought like
okay.
I've seen some other presentations there, and I think this is a very good deep dive presentation.
I
So
appreciate it. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I'm again like everything else that I te tell you guys. Like I'm only telling you from firsthand experience, right? So I think maybe that's the way that I go about it, which is like I'm not going to tell you, oh yeah, like how to. And there's a bunch of use cases, like, but I've heard of too, but I just haven't personally seen or used it firsthand, so I'm not going to share it. Like, because I don't know the value. Like I don't know actually if it's generating
there's
value.
value. And you
Yeah.
have a startup too, right? It's a
Yeah, 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 yeah.
RevOps startup. Yeah, you could do definitely like do a demo of your OpenClaw setup with some of that like ads like management and then like talk about your startup like and this helped my startup because X
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
you know. And there's a lot
Okay, good
of
to
people in
know.
that room. There's like 60 people like the last meetup I went to. So yeah.
Okay, good to know. I'll be doing a version. I wasn't sure if I'm going to do a version of this yet, but I'll be in New York Tech Week for Mucker. And I have like an AI and go-to-market kind of thing, and I was trying to figure out how to narrow it down, but I might just do something more like OpenClaw, a autonomous agent specific.
Yeah, just
Uh,
like an
yeah,
actual thing because
yeah,
everyone
yeah, yeah,
I've seen people like do their demos and they're like, oh, this is my open claw, like this is
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
my bookkeeper, my blah, and it's like no one actually shows it doing something. Like so
Yeah. Fair
people
enough. Okay. Okay, so then maybe next time I'll show you guys what I'm actually doing with it. Uh, yeah, I'll do that because I mean, again, like I was trying to cater this for people that like me 3 weeks ago, like 4 weeks ago, where it's like I have no idea what to do, and like the things that I would be like that I ran into that like caused me an hour to of just like frustration that I probably, if somebody told me directly, was like, oh yeah, you need to set up a separate if you're going to do iMac like or a Mac Mini, you need to separate. You need to create a separate Apple ID account. You need a separate phone number, like because it's going to tie to your own Apple ID, like just basic shit like that is stuff that I just found like, oh shit. And like, I think the only difference is that I probably have a little bit more patience or tenacity than the next person. But I know that people who run into that might just give up, just be like, fuck this. This is too long. This is going to take too long. Right. It's like, and I
Maybe
think that's what weeds people out, honestly.
right.
Like, yeah.
Maybe in your steps you could show hours, like how much time, like this setup took X time, even like ballpark it. It doesn't have to be precise so that because I did it in like a Saturday and I was like setting it up with like to use iMessage. I don't care. I'm on the other spectrum. I'm just like, yeah, just have control of my iMessage so I could like manage like texting. So like
Yeah.
that would have been good to have, like just like an idea of like how
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
step is. So
Cool. Are you still using it through iMessage?
I mean, I played with it, but I like stopped because I'm trying to launch my AI CFO. So yeah, no Claude playing right now. So just like trying to get the CFO out.
Okay.
A little rain for the parade, though. A recommendation for a slide or two is permissioning. So what you'll find as you go through, and this especially with OpenClaude, it likes to install different plugins as it
yes.
faces problems. So kind
Yeah.
of every user is going to have to find their Goldilocks zone,
Yeah.
where not everything's locked down, but yeah, I would highly recommend that especially for the audience of non-technical users.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, interesting.
Well,
That was
I
my
saw some
CTO's
quote.
that was my CTO's
Yeah,
perspective too, and I think that's
I was just
probably
gonna say,
why. Yeah, like his was a little bit took a. I don't know where his is now, but like it was like in the same amount of time we were doing like this, experiment together, but like same amount of time it wasn't able to do as many things, but like I was probably more loose with its permissions or like what it was installing than he was.
Mhm.
So yeah, it makes a
Yeah.
difference. It does make a difference, but again, like you need to be aware of what you're sacrificing.
What I heard you say that the clearest for why I think you were more successful than your CTO was just being clear on what you want to do, but not being too prescriptive on how, and taking the
Yeah,
screenshots and sharing it back. Well, this is not it. Like
yeah,
my downloads folder is like 200 screenshots right now. So
yeah,
that's just how it works.
yep. Cool. Anybody else questions or comments? Awesome. Great. I'm glad you guys got value. I mean, again, just trying to share along what I've figured out. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Cool.
Open request for a future sharing one is the
Yeah.
product hunt kind of go to market
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
prep that you'd mentioned.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can do that in 2 weeks. I want to make sure today I know I wanted to go through the milestones. I'm going to assume that at least most of you guys now are being, pretty self-critical on getting to these milestones, given how long we've been at this. But yeah, I think we'll run through those again next week. Just get an update around where things are, kind of like a refresh, a reset, and just kind of like definitely think. And I'll share this in the WhatsApp group, but like just think about like something else again. You guys really want to challenge yourself in for the next couple of weeks, and then the following we'll do like the product hunt one. But there is like for sure on the project hunt side like a playbook of things that we've seen that works, and
Mhm.
it's yeah, and it's pretty straightforward. Cool. Awesome, guys. Well, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chris.
Yep.